The need for a reboot with respect to corporate governance. And joining us now on the show is Prabal Basu Roy, Management Advisor and former Corporate Director, and also Shailesh Haribhakti, the Chairman of Haribhakti and Company. Gentlemen, many thanks for taking your time out and speaking to us at ET Now. Mr. Haribhakti, let me first come to you. The Corporate Affairs Ministry is talking about an exam for company directors. They're talking about a salary cap for independent directors. How effective will be measures like this in the spate of recent incidents where we have seen how independent directors have done very little when it comes to big frauds that we've seen coming out in big companies, big listed firms?
Let's first separate the two issues. The first issue is whether fresh appointment-seeking independent directors should go through a test before they are appointed. That, I think, is a thought which deserves very careful attention to how this test is designed and how it will be ensured that the people who are taking the test have actually absorbed what is supposed to be absorbed. And if on an evaluation that this is likely to add value to the directors who will first time be taking their position on boards, that might be a positive step in the right direction. But this test will have to be designed very carefully. We'll have to look at global best practices. We'll have to look at a lot of literature on the subject and then put it together. For the directors who have already been on boards, like I have been on boards for the last 35 years, there the provision is not to take this test. The provision which I read today is only to be registered on a panel. And my thought in this direction would be that because we already have evaluation of the directors by their colleagues, which is getting onto the websites of companies, a disclosure of that and a piecing together of that evaluation might serve the same purpose to put directors on the alert to keep themselves fully up to date and engaged with the affairs of the company. So I would say that both these things taken together.
I take that point, Mr. Haribhakti. You know, if I could now take that forward with Prabal Basu Roy, I'm going to come back to you. Prabal Basu Roy, you just heard what Shailesh Haribhakti has had to say. We don't know what's going to be in, still in the realm of speculation on how this exam will be structured. Is it going to be a set of questions that the Ministry of Corporate Affairs decides how it's going to work? But I think the problem also is that, you've had scam after scam after scam under the watch of the rating agencies, under the watch of internal auditors, external auditors, and of course the company board, which comprises independent directors. Isn't the bigger problem also the scope and the bandwidth of the independent directors? In the promoter-driven companies, it's someone's niece, nephew, grandfather, father-in-law, brother-in-law. It's usually some kind of a family member, distant relative, neighbor, etc. Isn't it time now that we start talking also about maybe independent directors at the cost of the company being allowed to hire, let's say, independent advisors? Isn't that also the kind of conversation we need to have now for strengthening corporate governance?
Nayantara, this is a very, very complex subject, and at least I have been writing about this from 2008 on this issue, and many commentators have commented on it that, the boards are stuffed with, generally speaking, with ornamental directors, barring few exceptions. And that is the bane of corporate India. So, it's a very complex topic, and there are various reasons for all of this. When the Satyam scam broke, I had written an article saying more Satyams will continue to happen. And 10 years down the road, you yourself have listed it out. So the issue is that while, the intent is good, the need is there for independent directors to be, to go through these tests, etc. The point is, will it be one more checkbox exercise or not? Because primarily, as you rightly said, the basic issue is the intent of the promoter or the controlling group in the in the corporate governance of of companies. That is the key issue. So while you have Infosys is on one hand, or a Wipro on one hand, where the intent is good and therefore you see, or HDFC for that matter, you see, how those companies are run. You also have the Fortises of the world, and you have, various other companies which you mentioned. So the point is, let me tell you, I know of many boards, even today, where even the audit committee, has directors who are not financially literate. At least not financially literate to the extent required by Section 177, because many of the things the audit committee is supposed to deliberate are mandated there by law. And they are complex issues. They are complex issues like, for example, review and monitoring the the audit process and the effectiveness of the audit process, of analyzing financial statements, monitoring end use of funds which have been taken, intercorporate loans, where the intercorporate loans have gone, for example, evaluation of financial controls in a risk-based environment. So many of these things are mandated. Now, if a person is not financially literate, it is simply not possible to understand these things. Number one. Number two is how the audit committees are functioning. I can name companies after companies where the audit committee meetings start in the morning at, say, 9:30, go on for 2-3 hours, say till 12 o'clock. Then you have board meetings for another 2 hours. And by 2:30, 3 o'clock, the financial statements are released to the exchanges. Now, in this situation, is it ever possible for anyone, let alone somebody who is not financially literate so much, to understand these nuances, to actually come and put forward reasonable objections or a reasonable test of controls? That's why very well-run companies have audit committee meetings 1 day in advance, at least 1 day in advance, and papers are circulated. But that's not the norm. That is not the norm. So, like you rightly said, it is the intent which is the issue. And this is one more good exercise. Can't fault the government for doing this. It is necessary. But how many people will come up to it?
There's such a brilliant point that you're raising.
Independence is the character trait.
There's such a brilliant point that you're raising. Just the fact that the scope doesn't exist in independent directors, that they're not financially literate at all. Shailesh, Haribhakti, come in on this. And the fact is, we are also at a time when, there are so many instances, and if I know about it, I know you know about it, and a lot of our viewers know about it, how becoming, getting independent directors, nominee directors on the board is not easy, because it is coming with liabilities as well, which, maybe they didn't understand earlier. If you look at the PE world, the VC world, they think about it long and hard, that what's going to happen if this company goes into a problem. The very fact that you got your equity markets at record highs and the broader markets are not doing that well shows that the fear and the mistrust which also exists in the smaller companies and the mid-cap companies as well. So Shailesh, Haribhakti, when you don't have the community to have enough independent directors, to have enough nominee directors which have the caliber, how do you solve this problem? Okay, I understand the problem of an exam. So once again, do you ask them to hire independent advisors across the company? How do you solve this problem? How do you have well-functioning boards?
Fantastic question, and I must compliment you for raising this issue, because that's really what we all need to put our might together and put together. So let me outline a plan which might work. Somebody will have to take the best practices in the world and establish a learning setup to make sure that those directors who are interested to get up the scale of their own learning will have the ability and the opportunity to do that at a fair cost and in a manner that is convenient to them. Two, it is important that experience sharing by senior directors, by people who have been on the board for many years, continues in a very concerted way for very, very extensive sharing, so that people who are coming into the process recently can gain from it. And three, if we can have a meeting of people who are in various positions as chairpersons of boards or chairpersons of committees, and they, in a free-flowing manner, can exchange thoughts, ideas, and concepts of how all of this should be dealt with, we would have been able to raise the whole bar of corporate governance. Let us remember that in India, we need almost 300,000 independent directors because the regulations surrounding independent directors has now been extended not just to the listed universe, but even to the unlisted universe. And with that in place, we need to do an extensive set of skill building, education, experience sharing, artificial intelligence driven best practice determination, and dissemination of all of this in a way that it actually
Yeah,
goes down.
Thank you so much for being so candid on the kind of processes and methods that we can do to strengthen corporate governance. I think it's about time that promoters of companies also rise to the occasion and boards also do that. There's only so much the government can do. I think it's about time we also start teaching ethics, for example, in our schools. These are conversations we need to start having. I'm running out of time. So, Mr. Roy, I'm going to come to you for the final question. Shailesh Haribhakti gave some ideas on how you can try and strengthen boards, where you're supposed to even go find board members. You raised such a fantastic point about how board members are financially illiterate, how badly the audit committees are run. Today's flavor of the season is also auditors. So while we talk about banning a Deloitte, while we talk about banning a KPMG, we should also ask the question, what were the internal auditors doing? I know that's a totally different conversation, but having said that, I want to get your views on this. Unprecedented move of the Modi government wanting to ban 2 of the big 4. We already know what happened to PwC after Satyam. Having said that, where do you stand on this issue? At the end of the day, the INFS contract was not with partners and employees of Deloitte, for example, or with KPMG, BSR. It was with the firm. So if you have such massive wrongdoing which is proved right, is it correct for the government to seek such a big ban which will have a disruptive effect?
Well, Nantara, this is a billion-dollar question, but I would think, I mean, it is a big topic, so we don't have time now, but I have reasoned about this in the past as well, that it is, I think it was necessary to do this for a big firm like PwC, etc., so that, the message is well driven down. Having said that, you brought up a very important point, and I agree with what Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti said. The last thing I would like to add in terms of this cleanup which is necessary, or the transformation which is necessary, is that auditors don't act on their own. Neither do audit committees, right? This entire system of governance, where it fails, is because the foursome, which is the CFO, the CEO, the auditors, I'm including internal auditors also in this, statutory auditors and internal auditors, and then the audit committee. It is this foursome which has to work together as a system. Now, if you have in all the situations of corporate failures which you have seen, the CFO and the CEO willfully damaged the system and did things to fudge the accounts, let's say, right? And the auditors played ball in many cases, and the audit committee just didn't have either the expertise or the time or the inclination to get into it. This is the problem. So unless CFOs stand up, and this is something I've said for many, many years, and I've been very unpopular because of that in certain situations. Unless the CFOs stand up and follow the ethics of what they're supposed to do, say no to the promoter or to the CEO or whoever is giving them directions to do things which are not right, like in Vijay Mallya's case or many other cases, this thing will not going to work. So the entire thing needs to work together, I think, and therefore liabilities need to come on CFOs as well, along with auditors, along with audit committees, which are significant liabilities. CFOs need to be liable now. I think unless you have that, it's not going to work. And I having been on both sides of the table, by the way, so I say that with this experience.
I think we are running out of time. Yeah, like I was saying, this is a topic so close to my heart and one I follow so closely. I could go on and on and on. If I was still at college, maybe I would even want to write some kind of a thesis or a PhD, but I can't. My producer is saying I have to take a commercial break. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here. I look forward to many more conversations with both of you together. I think this is a topic that's certainly going to be the flavor of the season, the days to come. Unfortunate, but it is true.